I've just completed my first month of being monetized on Facebook, and month to month, my content across Meta alone typically reaches around 1.5 million views, sometimes climbing up to around 1.6 or 1.7 million views. So, how much money does that actually make me? Because until Facebook monetized me, it was precisely zero. In this video, I'm going to show you my actual monetization dashboard. We'll dive into exactly what Meta paid me and which individual posts made me the most money, because that part genuinely surprised me. And then I want to show you why the content that makes me the most money on Facebook is absolutely not the content that is most valuable to my business. And that distinction is the difference between simply having an audience and having an actual business that pays the bills. If you're new here, I'm Zela. I'm a witch with a PhD, and I'm the founder of the Nightshade Sanctum Mystery School. I spent years in the corporate world, including management consulting at PwC, before building a full-time business out of Witchcraft, which is a sentence my former colleagues are still processing. If you like the honest, behind-the-curtain reality of building a spiritual business or any creator-led business, then subscribe and hit the notification bell, because this is exactly the kind of thing I love to talk about here. Right, let's find out what I earned. Okay, before I show you the number, let's establish what we're working with, because otherwise the number itself is meaningless. This isn't a million follower account. I have around 23,000 followers on Facebook and approximately 25,000 on Instagram. I post consistently 2 to 4 times a day, and I'm not creating content specifically for monetization. Facebook and Instagram are primarily a discovery and community platform for my business. And on a typical 30-day window, my content across Meta lands around 1.5 million views. So 23,000 Facebook followers, 25,000 Instagram followers, and then somewhere in the region of 1 and 1.5 million views a month. In a moment, I'm going to show you exactly the amount that Facebook paid me in my first month of monetization, and then we're going to jump into the actual analytics, and I'll explain where exactly my income comes from. So, what exactly did Facebook pay me? $327.27. And I was actually pretty happy about that. I know, hours creating content every single day, come hell or high water, and 1.5 million views a month, and only $300. And she's happy for some reason. Stay with me, because here's the thing, the number is actually very misleading. First, let's look at where the money actually comes from. Now, the dashboard splits it into buckets. $1.68 came from subscriptions, and yes, nobody is going to be retiring on my Facebook subscription income. The other $325.59 sits under content monetization. So naturally I assumed, okay, that's Meta paying me for the performance of my content. 1.5 million views in a month, I guess it makes sense. Except when I opened the actual breakdown, my reels earned $14.18. Photos, 41 cents. Stories, 45 cents. Text posts, that's 55 cents. So altogether, that's like $15.59. Now, some of my videos in that window had hundreds of thousands of views, and they earned a couple of cents each, which leaves a rather obvious question. Where did the other $310 come from? Well, extra bonus. $310. And here's a fun bit of behind the scenes honesty for you. I genuinely did not know the answer to that question. I spent a couple of weeks actually scratching my head over this. I searched, like, what is this extra bonus thing? I dug through every tab I could find on my business dashboard, and I could not work out where the $310 came from. And then, and I'm not exaggerating, this morning, the day I actually sat down to film this video, I opened a completely different tab on my Meta dashboard, and there it was. Get paid for cross-posting. So I cross-posted from my Instagram to Facebook for 30 days, and Meta paid me $310 for it. Now, I don't manually cross-post. I have turned on the setting that automatically pushes my Instagram content over to Facebook, purely so that I don't have to upload everything twice. And I did that to make my own life easier. I certainly wasn't trying to earn a bonus. I didn't even know that this bonus existed. And that means that the single largest line item in my entire month of Facebook earnings was not from a piece of content I made. It was not for my best reel or my most watched video or the thing that I spent 6 hours researching, writing, and filming. It was for turning on an automation setting and then doing nothing. Which means my actual first month of ordinary content earnings, the money my posts earned from their performance, was only around $15 from 1.5 million views. Hold on to that because it's going to matter a lot at the end of this video. But first, let's talk about the individual posts, because that's the part that I think gets even funnier. So these were my top earning posts for July. And before I show you the numbers, looking at these, what would you guess my highest earning post actually made? $4.28. And then $3.63, $1.66, $1.29, 65 cents. So $4, that was the winner. So tell me in the comments if you'd have guessed this. My top earners are almost all the funny content. So the memes, the jokes, the entertainment, not the deep teaching content, not the content that I would consider my most valuable work, and certainly not the content that requires hours of research, recording, and editing. Nope. It's the silly, low-effort posts that are out-earning the value posts, and if my best post earns $4, then why do I post at all? Here's the thing. I think most people fundamentally misunderstand the purpose of content. Not every post has the same job. The post that earns the most money from Meta is almost never the post that earns the most money for my business. Those are two completely different scoreboards. You see, my content falls into roughly 4 categories. And the first one is reach and discovery. So this one includes the memes and the highly shareable posts, the short punchy pieces. Their job is going to be to travel, so to put me and my business and my accounts in front of hundreds of thousands of strangers who have never heard of me. And as we see, they're also what Meta pays the most for, because Meta pays for eyeballs. And this is the content that collects the eyeballs. The second category of my content is the educational depth and authority posts. So these would be the talking head reels and the longer voiceovers. These are the reels and things that contain teachings. Far fewer people watch these, and Meta pays me pretty much nothing for them. But the people who do watch them are going to be the ones who stay in my world. This is the content where people will learn something valuable and they realize that they might want a reading from me, or they eventually buy a bundle of, say, 6 Crossroads counsels, so spiritual counseling sessions with me. Then the third category are my connection posts, and these will be shorter pieces that are intended to just simply resonate with people. They might look like a strong hook over beat B-roll, maybe something personal, an opinion, an experience, a hot take, and these sit in the middle. So they reach quite well often, but they also make people feel something. And sometimes it's just that they're feeling seen, like they're not the only person in the world carrying something or experiencing something. And that feeling is often also what turns a viewer into a follower, and a follower into a soulmate client. And then in the last category, we have some pure entertainment posts. And so these would be lip syncs or skits or jokes. And recently also we've added collaborations with my tattoo artist husband, Maurizio, who it turns out is the funniest member of this household. And I'm still coming to terms with that. Now, the job of that content is that people get to know me as a person. So not only as a teacher or as someone who makes memes. And so far you guys have been loving that type of content and certainly asking for more of this, and so we've got more of that content coming. So look at what's actually happening. A meme makes $4 and reaches thousands of strangers. Meanwhile, a talking head video makes almost nothing and gets very, very few views. Yet, it will be the reason why someone spends the next 6 months watching me, joins my mailing list, books a reading, eventually enrolls in one of my programs, or eventually becomes an Obsidian Throne VIP client. The $4 post opens the door while the 4-cent post actually builds the house. Honestly, how I plan and balance these 4 different categories of social media posts across a week could be an entire video on its own. And if that's something you want me to break down properly for you, you know, the actual social media strategy that drives my business, then let me know in the comments and I'll put that one together for you. Which brings us to the real question of this video. If content monetization clearly is not paying my bills, then what the hell is? First, let me address the reaction I know many of you are having right now, which is $300, that's absolutely nothing. I completely disagree, and here is why. I did not build a Facebook content farm. I don't film and edit 17 rage bait posts a day to squeeze money out of an algorithm. Monetization was never part of my business plan. I only got monetized recently, and frankly, it was a lovely surprise. Every single piece of that content already existed to serve my actual business. And Meta simply came along and added $327 on top of what that content was already doing for me. And that, in my opinion, is excellent incremental revenue, and I will take it gladly. But now remember what we saw in the breakdown. Of that $327, about $15 came from my content actually performing. $310 came from that automated cross-posting setting that I turned on to save myself work. So the income was not from anything I created there on social media and not from something I count on continuing. And that is exactly why monetization isn't part of my business plan. I am absolutely delighted that Meta decided to reward cross-posting this particular month, but you cannot build a business forecast around a bonus program that could change or disappear at any time, or from a behavior you weren't even trying to be rewarded for. You can't pay rent with hopefully Meta still likes cross-posting in September. I would be absolutely terrified if my livelihood depended on this dashboard. My own analytics just demonstrated the problem. Money whose source and recurrence you don't control is not income that you can build a life on. It's simply a bonus. It is not a foundation. So let's talk about where the money actually comes from in my business. Now, my business has multiple layers. There's commissioned spell work. You know, clients commission bespoke workings with me, and that is a substantial part of my income. Then there's also my tarot readings, which have been wildly popular for over a decade now. Crossroads counsel sessions, my one-on-one spiritual counseling sessions, as well as energy work and healings and astrology sessions. And then there's also my Patreon, the Weird Circle, which is still small, but it is growing. And there are courses and programs that I run through the Nightshade Sanctum Mystery School. And then at the premium end, there is Obsidian Throne, which is my private business consulting container. And we'll come back to that one because it's really important. Now, here's the distinction that matters more than the list itself. And if you take one thing from this video, take this. There are two kinds of revenue. The one is transactional and the other is recurring. When someone commissions a spell from me, that is absolutely wonderful. But then next month, that revenue starts again at zero and I have to find the next client. Every transactional stream resets on the first of the month. But the mystery school works differently. The priestess path alone, so mystic priestess arising, runs across an entire year. And many of my students choose payment plans rather than paying for their tuition upfront, which means that part of the school's revenue is predictable months in advance. I know, say, in August, what's going to be arriving in November. Patreon does the same thing, but at a much smaller scale. It is smaller ticket, but it is also a recurring income. And then at the premium end, there is Obsidian Throne, a 6-month private consulting engagement with me, and that is a 5-figure container with limited places. So I'm not relying on finding a brand new client for that every Monday morning. Notice I'm saying more predictable income, but what I'm not saying is guaranteed income, because nothing in business is guaranteed. Students complete their paths within the mystery school, Patreons move on, that is the natural cycle. But the difference between everything resets to zero monthly and a meaningful portion of my income is contracted months ahead, that difference is the entire quality of my life. So the real equation is not more followers equals more money. It's I have an audience online, then regular posting through a variety of content types builds trust, which makes people curious about the ecosystem of offers that I have available. And then this gives rise to a mixture of immediate and recurring revenue. 1.5 million views a month paid me $327, but the trust underneath those views is what pays for everything else. And there's something I really want to say here, because I don't think people always realize what their purchase actually means to a smaller creator like me. When someone joins my Patreon or books a reading or commissions spell work or enrolls in one of my programs, that is not an abstract number on some corporate dashboard somewhere. That is quite literally what allows me to keep doing this work. And especially the people who choose the longer containers and the memberships and the payment plans, you create a little bit of predictability in a business that is otherwise wildly unpredictable. And that means you are the reason that I can plan and quite literally the reason I can breathe. It matters so much to me. It genuinely, materially changes my life. Thank you. So if you're watching this because you're trying to build your own creator-led business, here's what I'd offer you. Don't only ask, how do I get monetized? Meta paying you is a nice bonus, but it's definitely not a foundation. Ask instead, when somebody discovers me, what happens next? Where can they go? Where can they buy? How can they work with me at different depths and different price points? And the question I'd honestly ask before all others is, how much of my income disappears back to zero on the 1st of every month. Because if the answer is all of it, that's not a content problem, that is a business architecture problem, and no amount of going viral fixes that. This is exactly what I work on with clients inside Obsidian Throne, my 6-month private consulting container for spiritual business owners. We don't just focus on how to get more views, we're also building the business underneath the visibility. That's going to be things like your positioning, your offers, your content strategy, your conversion pathways, building revenue that becomes more and more predictable over time. It draws on my years in management consulting and everything I've built here in my businesses and the Nightshade Sanctum. If you want to run a version of that diagnosis on your own business first, before anything else, I've actually put together a free tool called the 6-Gate Breakthrough Guide, and it walks you through the same 6 places that I check first in any stuck spiritual business, and it'll show you your own business constraints in about 20 minutes. That's linked in the description below, and there's absolutely no strings attached if you want to grab that guide and put it to use. And if you already know that you want my eyes directly on your business, the way to do that is going to be through a complimentary 45-minute breakthrough call with me, where I run this exact kind of diagnosis with you live on your business. And that's linked in the description too, and also pinned in the comments. And if this video was useful to you at all, if seeing the actual numbers demystified something for you, then give it a like, because it genuinely helps this channel grow toward its own monetization one day, which at the current Facebook rates should maybe buy me a very nice coffee. Subscribe if you haven't, and tell me in the comments what number surprised you the most. My bet is it'll be the cross-posting bonus. I'll see you in the next video.